Welcome back to another breakdown for Peacemaker Season 2. We're going to be talking about Episode 5 today, going over those Easter eggs, references, breaking down that ending, and going over some theories I have as well. Because this episode was chock full of a lot of little things that we need to cover. Which this episode did start off with a 3 years ago flashback with the memorial of Rick Flag, showing that the events of the Suicide Squad happened 3 years ago. We have Rick Flag Sr. talking to Harcourt, mentioning the events that happened on Corto Maltese, with them going against a giant starfish, aka Starro, and just him trying to get information about Rick Flag's death, about who did it, and Harcourt saying that she can't give the information, just like how we saw in the previous episode, where Rick Flag couldn't get the document to show what happened for his son's death, and when he eventually became the leader of Argus, that's when he was able to do it. We have him mentioning here too that Harcourt and Rick Flag loved each other as friends and something more, and also Harcourt mentioning that he had relations and loved other women, so it looked like he was probably sleeping around. Just like how we know he was cheating on Enchantress with Harcourt, and there was a chance that he was doing it with other girls within Argus as well. They mentioned Project Butterfly and how Harcourt was put on that position by Waller, and Rick Flag Sr. seems to manipulate it to turn and say that Waller was already trying to push her away and put her on shitty assignments so that Waller could get back at her for revolting during Suicide Squad. And we also have Harcourt mentioning that she'd make the guy who killed Rick Flag pay, which calls back to season 1 where she was so standoffish and did not like Peacemaker to begin with, but eventually she did end up catching feelings for him. Now when we get to the ambush that was set up by Argus to capture Peacemaker at Kupperberg Park, we did have Peacemaker ducking and weaving through everyone, making it so that the sniper couldn't get to him, and he was just making his way, hiding behind civilians so that wouldn't happen. So he already knew that this was a setup because Harcourt had actually warned him about it when she was texting him. But all he wanted to do was come and get his answer so that he knows that he either stay on this earth or go to the other universe to be with the Harcourt that does want to be with him. She said she was drunk and wished it never happened, which I feel like it's her conflicting feelings for caring about Rick Flag and falling in love with him, but at the same time also liking Peacemaker and feeling that guilt for being with a man that killed the man she loved. So she's having a lot of stuff going on. She has a lot of issues she has to deal with. So I think this is just her trying to deal with that, but also trying to protect Peacemaker at the same time, which is why she told him not to come. And of course, because of the other alternate universe, Peacemaker even mentions about Rick Flag and her, because it happened in this universe just like how it happened in the other universe. And she says how it was her only friend. So he knows that she has some resentment there because of what he did to Rick. So he's now more aware about what's going on, especially after he went to that other universe. And that talk they had on the bench kind of mirrors that other universe as well, where he was talking to Harcourt, except instead of it being like a very good time and him loving his life, it's something more depressing and he now has to deal with. But that's when we have Argus rolling in. He calls Flurry Shaft, and it goes into this cool little standoff as he tries to take down the Argus, blocks his path with the other Argus agent by holding him on his shoulders and making it so that they can't take him down so easily. Up until Bordeaux pulls out her cybernetic eye and is able to lock on to him with a 98% accuracy so they could take him out. But Harcourt takes him down first so that he doesn't get shot. Now this is really interesting here because I didn't know Sasha Bordeaux was going to have somewhat of powers or even have a cybernetic eye, so I thought this was really interesting. Where then when we do get to later in the episode, we find out that Bordeaux is actually a cyborg. Where we find out through Economos that Bordeaux had actually gone in a plane crash, her body was mangled, and Argus rebuilt her, turning her into a cyborg that would work for them. However, in the comics, Sasha Bordeaux does become a cyborg as well. Now, the way it happens after she first appears in Detective Comics number 751 from 2000 as Bruce Wayne's bodyguard, eventually her and Bruce would get framed for murder, she would get sent to jail for that murder, and while she was in prison, she would get severely wounded by another prisoner, and she would have died if the government agency Checkmate had not given her medical treatment. So they faked her death, offered her a new name, gave her plastic surgery, all in order for her to work with them so that she could survive and live on, which pretty much just gave her no other options for doing that, so she had to join this government agency, which Checkmate is an offshoot of Task Force X and something that was created by Amanda Waller. Now, eventually, later down the road, Maxwell Lord would hijack Brother Eye, an AI satellite that was created by Bruce Wayne, all in order to monitor the superhuman activity on Earth. Now, during this time in the comics, Brother Eye would become sentient due to the actions of Alexander Luthor Jr. as part of his plans for the storyline Infinite Crisis. Alexander Luthor also made an army of cyborgs known as OMACs, programmed to hunt down and kill superhumans or specific targets. Now, OMACs in the comics are cyborgs who take control over human bodies via virus created from Brainiac 13 derived nanotechnology acquired by the US Department of Defense and LexCorp, which was then secretly introduced into general vaccine supplies, all in order to assassinate any and all beings with superpowers. Now, OMAC is actually the term for a superhero that was first introduced in OMAC number 1 from 1974. Now, OMAC stands for Omni Mind and Community, which was nanotechnology enhanced beings that were controlled by Brother Eye, like we mentioned before, but that's their full name for their acronym. Now, after Bordeaux was captured by Maxwell Lord, with the help of an imprisoned agent, Jessica Midnight, Bordeaux escaped and headed out to kill Lord, unaware that he was already dead during that event because Wonder Woman had snapped his neck. While they were on their way out, OMAC attacked the two and impaled Bordeaux. All because Maxwell Lord, before he died, had set OMAC after her. Now, this attack actually activated her programming, turning her into an OMAC cyborg. However, she retained most of her human features, although her skin now resembled a metallic coating, and one of her eyes was empty. She also retained her free will, unlike other OMACs that became under Brother Eye's control. Now, in the comics, because she has the OMAC's cybernetics, she had enhanced strength, enhanced stamina, enhanced speed, dexterity, durability, enhanced resistance, enhanced healing, enhanced villains, and enhanced vision. So she got all like the superpowers that comes with being a cyborg. So it makes me wonder if they're going to be going an OMAC route at some point in the DCU where people are trying to make cyborgs out of people, but we will see when it comes to that. Now, when we flash back to when Peacemaker was caught, we did get a little side story with Adebayo getting a call from someone that found her security ad inside the magazine. However, it wasn't for security, instead it was for prostitution, which we just got a nice little funny scene between Vigilante and Adebayo, where Vigilante is like, don't worry about me, I don't kill prostitutes. Their lives are hard enough, which is just funny. I love Vigilante's just weird sense of morality, and it never gets old. We then ended up having Bordeaux giving Harcourt shit for not letting her take out Peacemaker, which makes me feel that Bordeaux wanted to kill Peacemaker for some reason. Maybe Bordeaux and Rick Flag had a relationship at some point, or she just does not like Peacemaker and wanted an excuse to kill someone. But then that leads us into a very interesting scene, where Harcourt wants Economos to put Peacemaker in the system so they can't just make him disappear, because otherwise Argus could just write him off like they never actually caught him and that he's just put in a hole somewhere where no one will hear from him again. But while this is going on, we have Rick Flag Sr. taking Peacemaker's cuffs off and then beating the living shit out of him so that he can face the man that killed his son. And we even have Peacemaker saying that he admired Rick Flag and that he looked up to him and he regretted what he did, which is what we saw during the Suicide Squad movie and during Peacemaker Season 1. Something that Peacemaker has been struggling with is killing Rick Flag and following his orders, because he thought he was doing it for the name of justice, but in the end, he was just doing Waller's dirty deeds. But while that's going on, after Bordeaux finds out that Peacemaker is inside the system, she goes and stops Rick Flag Sr. from beating the crap out of him, because now it's too late. They know he's there, so he can't look like he's been absolutely beaten or possibly killed by Rick Flag Sr. within this Argus facility, which then leads to Abadeo and Vigilante coming to pick him up because they have to release him, because if they sent him to the local jail, they would know that he got beat up in custody. Even though I don't think Peacemaker would say anything, he would probably just sit there quietly and say that happened when he fought back, or something along those lines. Mostly because of his regret for killing Rick Flag, and he probably feels like he deserves that beating. Then they had Judo Master tailing him in the most obvious car. He's in a bright blue car tailing them. I'm surprised they didn't notice it. He also had a flaming steering wheel cover that resembles his love for Flaming Hot Cheetos. But at the same time, Rick Flag Sr. mentions the Metropolis incident once again, so they keep referencing what's going on in Superman and saying that they need to stop Peacemaker because of his dimensional portal. So they are definitely setting up that, that's the reason and the excuse they're using to go after Peacemaker, even though there's more to it. He even tells Bordeaux he gave the order to shoot Peacemaker knowing that Harcourt would stop him, and now that he beat the crap out of Peacemaker, Peacemaker now thinks that he's fueled by rage and wanting revenge, that he'll let his guard down a little bit while Juno Master tails them, which is just kind of showing that Rick Flag Sr. is like this mastermind behind everything that's going on right now. He's kind of manipulating events to get what he wants as an excuse, because he still wants to take down Peacemaker for what he did to his son, but at the same time, he needs a valid reason to go legally in the law to do it so that he doesn't get taken off being Argus and thrown in jail himself. Now, we have Peacemaker filling in Vigilante and Adebayo about Harcourt betraying him, all in order to get her job back, but Adebayo questions it. She's like, that's not what she would do, which then comes around later in the episode when Harcourt tells Adebayo about how she warned Peacemaker in the beginning, and she's like, yeah, I knew you were like that, and he trusts her. So even though Peacemaker feels like he was betrayed, Harcourt was trying to protect him. But because Harcourt has betrayed him, it's now pushing him to go into that other universe because he feels like that's where his perfect life is. But now that we're back at the cabin, we have to talk about the other little side plot that's been going on in the episode before we wrap up the episode with all the stuff that went down after it. Because we had Saint Wild going to find the cabin, finding Eagly, and trying to poison him. However, it fails because he kills a fox instead, and then Eagly comes up with his master plan to take down the man that's trying to kill him, which then just gives us this really interesting scene of Buddy coming in with a giant ass rifle, shooting an eagle, thinking he killed the eagle, the prime eagle, then eagerly showing up and absolutely coming in with an army of eagles, showing that he is the prime eagle, showing some mystical powers behind him, which I think was just Saint Wild seeing it in his head because he drew the symbol on the ground. So he's seeing Eagly as his prime evil. It's his kind of delusion rather than Eagly actually having superpowers. But maybe Eagly is the prime eagle and he's able to call in the other eagles to fight for him. So now Eagly can call in other eagles. He now has superpowers in some way. At least that's how they presented it. Either that or he's like the alpha and he's able to call in his underlings to fight for him. And then they just absolutely decimate Saint Wild, and it was something I was not expecting, but goddamn, Michael Rooker got torn to shreds by a bunch of eagles. And then we have the moment of Eagly just walking up to Peacemaker with a finger, and he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna pretend like you found that, because Buddy just killed someone. He's like, well, yeah, we're going into another universe anyways. Who cares? We also have a nice little fun scene of Judo Master and Flurry not liking each other. Just some nice conversation of them literally hating each other as they insult one another. And also Rick Flag Sr. and Bordeaux getting a little close, seeming like a love is starting. This man just gets all the beautiful women, just like how he did in Creature Commandos. And now he's doing it again. But I feel like Bordeaux has her own plans behind the scenes that have been yet to be revealed. So we'll see what happens next. But Rick Flag Sr. is just getting all the ladies. But then we have Peacemaker activating his portal after leaving a note for Adebayo and his friends to say goodbye. Because he's going to go live his life in another universe as he makes his portal close behind him when he leaves, all getting ready for him to start his new life and adventure in the alternate Earth, and even brings Eagly with him and says, you ready for an adventure, bud? So just showing where he's going. He's thinking he needs a new life. He's ditching all his friends, even though only one of them betrayed him, and he's leaving this universe, which also had Juno Master following behind because he couldn't actually contact Argus. So he made a quick decision, left a note for them, and then followed through the portal as well, which Buddy might actually have a super hard time when it comes to this, because if this is the racist Earth or Earth Act or the white supremacist Earth, he's gonna get killed right away or captured, or something terrible is gonna happen to Judo Master because he's going into this other Earth that seems to be primarily racist. But we will see when we get there. You know, there's still some stuff to come from it, and though the episode ended with 11th Street kids wanting to get Peacemaker, it feels like they're gonna have more issues as well when they go over there. But we will see. We have 3 episodes left. We still have more episodes to come, and it's gonna get insane, I feel like, as we keep progressing through the story. It was cool when he got into the universe, because he comes in, Keith comes up, he's like, hey, we got a kaiju to fight, suit up. And then he's wondering why there's an eagle in his room, but Peacemaker says, it's my new sidekick, which means that there was never an Eagly in that universe to begin with, which means the theory from the very beginning of the series, where people were talking about, and I believe I talked about it as well, that Eagly might have come from that universe to begin with, was false. So he must have just smelled Peacemaker and went to that door, and that's why he found the door to begin with. But it turns out, as they're flying in this epic flight towards them all being heroes, Peacemaker with his dad and his brother and Eagly flying through the sky, taking on that kaiju. It turns out that kaiju is similar to the one we saw in Superman, that Superman and the Justice Gang took down. I did see people talking about how this means that there's no Superman in this universe because he didn't come to stop the giant kaiju. But if this is in a completely different state from where Metropolis is, it wouldn't make sense for Superman to come fight the kaiju if this place already had its own heroes, which it did. So I don't see that theory really panning out. I could totally see them still having a version of Superman, but being an evil version, just like how Earth X has one. But Peacemaker gets to go and be with Harcourt now in this nice little loving moment when he's covered in guts, and we'll see what happens next episode with him. However, with the 11th Street kids who are now going to go get Peacemaker, like they don't agree with him leaving. Vigilante is crying because he lost his brother and his best friend, someone he valued so much, but Peacemaker just ditched him. I'm hoping that Vigilante gets kind of a scene to tell Peacemaker how he feels about this, because like Buddy just left the only person that really truly cared for him and just left him in the dust and left him alone. So, and Vigilante is already pretty much unstable, so I don't think that was a good idea to begin with, and it was one of the few that actually had his back no matter what. So I feel bad for Vigilante for what happened, and I really hope that maybe he punches Peacemaker and gets mad at him and actually gives him a piece of his mind for why he ditched him. But it was also really interesting to see that Peacemaker said that he doesn't feel like he can be redeemed on their Earth, so he left to the other universe to be with his family and Harcourt, showing that he feels like he's stuck. It's one of those character growth moments where he has to figure out what to do next so that he can build on his future, so they can be the hero he wants to be. Which means that something bad's going to happen to the 11th Street kids when they show up in this other universe. Either they're going to get caught, they're going to get put in jail. If it's a racist Earth, Adebayo is going to have an issue. So they're going to have to deal with a lot of consequences going to this Earth, because there has to be a reason why Peacemaker would turn on his family and fight back, which is most likely what's going to be happening here. And I'm very curious to see how they're going to play this out now. Are they going to find out that Peacemaker is not the same one from that universe and turn on him because it's not their brother/son? Or is Peacemaker going to turn on them first because they go after Adebayo, for example, and they try to throw her in jail or kill her because she's not white like the rest of the universe seems to be so far? So we'll see. I feel like there's a lot of big consequences that are coming, and I'm very curious to see like how they're going to play this out now and how they're going to be wrecking shit in this new universe. But that was a great episode. Some cool stuff to come out of it. I got my questions for what's going to happen next, and I like the little Easter eggs and references, even though this one had very minimal compared to the last episodes. It's still a good time, still a great time, and I really like the character development. I just wish we got a little bit more vigilante. But let me know, what did you think of this episode? Do you have any theories to go along with what happened during it? And did you notice any other Easter eggs and references as well? I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the like and hit the subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my anime, Marvel, and DC videos. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you next week when it's time to watch episode 6 of Peacemaker Season 2.